It's called MMA Minute YouTube channel. Nice, my brother. Good luck on your show. I will watch MMA Minute.
MMA Minute episode 10. We've been gone for a few weeks. We missed last week's UFC 295 card, but we're going to go over what happened in that, and then we're going to predict this week's UFC fight night, Brendan Allen versus Paul Craig. So to start the main card, there was Diego Lopez versus Pat Sabatini. Surprisingly, Diego Lopez, they had him as the underdog. Right here, he's listed as a plus 100 favorite. I don't know. Maybe it's because Pat Sabatini was the hometown guy. It was in Madison Square Garden, and he's from New York. But Diego Lopez gets the finish pretty quickly. Performance of the night. He's actually got a pretty good record. I was checking it out. He's 23-6, and I don't think they have him ranked in the featherweight division yet, which is surprising. Yeah, looking at it right now, he's not. They don't have him in the rankings. But if he keeps getting finishes like he has been, he'll definitely probably be at least top 15 within his next fight. But going on to the next one, Benoit Saint-Denis versus Matt Frevola. Super good fight, but another quick one, minute 30 first fight, minute 31 the second fight. Yeah, so we were watching the fight, and you could kind of tell that he was setting up the high kick because the way that he was framing him off the cage, and then Frevola he runs off to his right, and then Saint-Denis just frames him off perfectly and threw the high kick and clipped him in the top of the head. And another fight of the night bonus. So yeah, Benoit Saint-Denis, I think he went from unranked to being ranked 11th, which is pretty crazy because I don't think Frevola had any ranking to his name. But, he has the win over Drew Dober, who is, I think, 15th in the division. So Saint-Denis versus Dober would be a pretty entertaining fight. I'm sure that would be a pretty quick one, too, and in knockout. But so those were the first two fights of the night, or first two fights of the main card. And then you had Andrade versus Mackenzie Dern. That was for a girl fight, that was pretty crazy, I will say. Mackenzie Dern hurt her a few times. Andrade hurt her a few times. But Mackenzie Dern, she's kind of, I saw someone say that she's the new, or she fights a lot like Ronda Rousey, and it's true. She definitely doesn't have the grappling like Ronda Rousey, but their striking is very similar. And there's just like this class of fighting at least in the women's division. There's like these few 3 fighters at the top of every division, and most of them are like former champions. You have her, Wei Li, Shevchenko, and then Mackenzie Dern's like trying to crack it, and then you have Erin Blanchfield, people like that. But I feel like most of the girls just aren't on the level of a lot of those top women in the division. Andrade, you could see her. I think she dropped her like 3 or 4 times, and then eventually the ref just called it. She wasn't out, Mackenzie Dern, but there was just no point in her staying in the fight. But super impressive win for Andrade, a former champion. She's wicked powerful for the strawweight division. She's just like fights like a mini Tyson, And Mackenzie Dern had a lot of height on her, real crazy height advantage, and Andrade overcame that and actually overcame some good adversity in the fight and ended up getting the finish. So good performance by her, which is pretty. I don't really know who I thought was going to win that because I'm not sold on Mackenzie Dern, but I don't know. I kind of like to stay away from the women's fights, especially for the parlays, because it just doesn't. It's not worth it. Not worth losing the money, but definitely an entertaining fight, and maybe Andrade can be fighting for the title again soon, but we'll see. So we'll move on to the 2 main fights. I was 1 for 2 on these. So looking at the first one, we'll just it's actually crazy looking at all the times of these fights. Another 1 minute into the first round. Aspinall obviously finishes Sergey. That was a crazy KO because Sergey, his record in the UFC, I think it was like 9-1, something like that. But his last, it could have been 8-1, I don't know, something like that. But 7-1, doesn't matter. He was fighting on, I think, a 7 or 8 fight knockout streak, all of them in the first round. Still, you could say none of his fights in the UFC have left the first round, so we don't know how his gas tank is. Maybe the guy just is drained after the first 5 minutes because he's finished all his UFC fights in the first round, and he's been finished both times in the first round. Last time it was by Overeem, and this time it was by Aspinall. I think I talked about it a little bit in the last episode, but that was a while ago. I did not think that Aspinall's stand-up would be on the same level as Pavlovich's because I was only judging it off the first few, 30 seconds of the Curtis Blades Aspinall fight, and then you look at Sergey Pavlovich versus Aspinall. Obviously, completely different fights, but Sergey Pavlovich versus Blades, I meant. But obviously, Aspinall's fight with Blades went way differently. 30 seconds in, he snaps his knee or snaps his leg, but I didn't think he looked that great. It looked like for the 30 seconds that the fight happened, he didn't look that great. It kind of sounds stupid, but Curtis Blades, it looked, was beating him to the punch and kind of cracked him pretty quickly. So just that, I don't know. You never should look at MMA math, but the common opponent and kind of the rise that Sergey was on and Aspinall recovering from the injury, it just made me think that Sergey would beat him. But you got to give it to Aspinall, cracked him, came out and looked really sharp. You could tell just within the first minute, the way they were moving, you could tell Aspinall looked really good on his feet, really light on his feet, where Sergey was kind of flat-footed. Sergey's super, super lengthy with his reach. They had that moment right off the bat when they were doing their face-off where they put their arms across and touched each other. And you could see Tom's arm was completely extended, where Sergey's was like this, basically. He had crazy reach advantage on him. He tagged Aspinall right off the bat, but he wore it, stayed marching forward. Both of them kind of keep their hands pretty low, and then Aspinall just got him right on the temple, perfect strike, perfect 1-2, and then got him out of there. So new champion, new interim champion. People are going to want to see Aspinall versus Jones. I don't think that's going to happen. Jones's next fight's his last fight. Him and Stipe, probably both of them are going to retire. So Aspinall will be good. It's good to have him as a champion, especially another British champion. So it's him, Bisping, and Leon. So it's good to have that for the fan base over there because Jones, I think his next fight, who knows when it's going to be. I don't remember if they have a date yet. But either way, Jones win or lose, him and Stipe are both retiring in that fight. So I think this was probably a pretty good decision in the long run because nobody's ever going to remember Aspinall was the interim champ if he does fight Jones and Jones just squashes him. He probably would do that. Maybe people think otherwise, but I've yet to see anybody who, especially any heavyweights, who move the way Jones does, have the submission and wrestling skills that Jones has. But yeah, Aspinall's striking is crazy. I know he's good at jiu-jitsu, but he's good at jiu-jitsu in the UK. It's a lot different over here in America. The American wrestling, Jon Jones is just, I don't see him losing to anybody. I just want him to fight Stipe. I wish he would stick around and take out another class of fighters, but I can see him not wanting to. He's already proved everything he has in the sport. So yeah, Aspinall will be the new champion. Maybe Cyril Gane, that would be a good fight. Doesn't sound like Francis is ever coming back. They asked Dana about the possible Francis Jones fight, and he just was pretty pissed about them even bringing it up. So, Aspinall fight could be Almeida, got the victory over Derek Lewis. But, there's some pretty good young talent in the heavyweight division. So there's a lot of matchups. You kind of just have to get the Jon Jones and Stipe, the old guys, out of the way. Let them have their one fight, and then winner right off into the sunset, and loser probably, unless Jon Jones loses, that's never going to happen. But God forbid if it did, I don't think he would retire. I think he'd need that rematch. But imagine if Stipe retired after beating Jon Jones, he would be pissed. So I don't even know if the UFC would let that happen. They'd probably offer Stipe a lot of money just for Jones to get that rematch opportunity. But I don't know. That's far down the line, getting ahead of ourselves. But moving on to the main event, it was Yuri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira. Wow, I was pulling for Pereira the whole time. Big Pereira fan. And Yuri also, huge Yuri fan. I'm sure a lot of you guys were the same way. Nobody wins in this fight because you like both guys, and they're both just the most entertaining fighters, the best fighters to watch. It was just great that we got them both, you could say, in their primes. Granted, Alex is getting pretty old. But, I wish I had broken down this fight a little bit better because, so what I would have said is, I don't know. It kind of sounds weird because hindsight and everything, but Alex Pereira, his striking is so crisp, so technical. is kickboxing. He's a kickboxing world champion, two-time world champion kickboxing, and now two-time champion in UFC. I don't think anybody else has ever done that. So he's one of the most accomplished combat sports athletes on the planet, and obviously he's done that in like 7 UFC fights, and I think in his 7 UFC fights he's beaten Jan Blachowicz, Israel Adesanya, Sean Strickland, and now Yuri Prochazka. So that's 4 out of his 7 fights. He beat former champions, which is another crazy stat that you can just give him for his another accolade that he has. But this fight in particular, Yuri's style is obviously insane. It's crazy. It's awkward. And Alex is the exact opposite. He's 1-2. He's going to crack you with the left hook, and you need to watch out for the kicks at all times, obviously. And I thought his game plan when he came out right away with the low leg kicks was genius. He did the same thing to Izzy in their first UFC fight, just kind of messed his legs up right off the bat, and never gave Izzy the chance to do that to him. So what he did to Yuri, taking out the bigger guy's legs, not that Yuri was that much bigger because on Fight Night they looked pretty similar size, but, chop him down, take out his base, pretty smart, get Yuri thinking about other things than the left hook. And it worked, first round, but then Yuri took him down. I knew that too. I was watching, like I said, I was watching my friend, and everybody turns into wrestlers when they fight Alex. They always shoot. They always try to take him down. And Yuri did the same thing, got him down in the first round. Alex's wrestling is not good at all. He'd lose to a good D1 college wrestler in a grappling match for sure. But, that doesn't matter, He's one of the best strikers on the planet, and obviously he's gotten super favorable matchups, and this being one of them. But every time he does get on the ground, he holds his own. He doesn't, take too much damage. He's avoided submissions. And Yuri obviously submitted Glover, who trains with Alex. So his submission defense has proved to be pretty good so far, good enough to be two-time world champion. So, but first round, Alex gets taken down and then kind of just spends probably a minute and a half on the ground, maybe a little bit more than that. But close first round, could have gone either way. It depends how you look at it. Alex landed the more effective leg kicks, but kind of abandoned it later on in the round, and then gets taken down. So if you look at control time, you give it to Yuri, but if you look at strikes, you give it to Alex. Yuri did land some good elbows on the ground, so maybe lean Yuri just for the takedown, but still a close round. And then second round, Alex abandoned those leg kicks. He wasn't throwing them as much as I thought he should have. But Yuri looked a lot better in the second round on the feet, was hitting Alex hard. But, I kind of think that was Alex's plan, was to bait him into that, get him to start striking crazy, get him to throw that unorthodox where he's running at you with his hands low. If you watch the Yuri's debut versus Volkan cracked him bad a few times. Glover almost took him out in the 5th round, so he's not immune to, eating shots. Pause. The guy has been tagged plenty of times, and he really, once he gets in the fight, he kind of does the Chandler, the Garbrandt, where they just throw after a round, they just throw all caution to the wind and just start going at the guy with everything. So that was probably Alex's plan, was to kind of get Yuri away from his more technical game plan, which I'm sure he went in there with. When you're fighting a guy like Alex, that you can't really be sloppy. You can't run in with your hands low. And he did pretty good, didn't take too many big punches in the first round. And then second round, he did good for the most part. And then, he just comes in, charging Alex after he tags him a few good times. Alex starts baiting him, and then, classic left hook, he tagged him with it. Yeah, so actually, I think Alex tagged him with a head kick earlier in the fight, too. You could tell that if this is the fight I'm thinking of, maybe I'm thinking of the Saint-Denis fight, but I don't know. I think I was thinking of this one. I think that Pereira, or Yuri, my bad. I think Yuri was leaning a lot into his punches. And I remember saying to my buddy watching that Alex needs to throw the head kick. And he tagged him with it. I think it was the first round, maybe the second. But so he did hit him other than that kind of initial strike. But, he was throwing a lot of kicks. Or not initial strike, but that knockout strike. But Alex threw a lot of kicks. And then eventually, he got him with that left hook. And then people, you know what pisses me off about Rogan? He obviously is a great announcer, and it wasn't just him who did this, but they did it with the Sterling O'Malley fight, I think. They just instantly call early stoppage. Like, I don't know what about that was early. Even Yuri said it after the fight himself. But it just annoyed me so much when Alex finishes him, they were like, I don't know about that. I don't know. To me, in what world would that fight not be stopped? Alex basically face plants him with his signature shot. So the ref's already like, damn, this fight's. But imagine if some guy got head kicked by Crow Cop. Obviously, the ref's gonna take that shot a little bit more seriously than if he was to get hit with like a right hook or something. So he hits him with the left hook, drops him bad. That's what Alex finishes everybody with. Everyone knows that. So face plants him. Yuri has been known to have great recovery because he even said himself he got knocked out in the fight with Dominic Cruz that he won by knockout. Dominic Cruz up kicked him and he was falling down, and when he hit the ground, he came to. You could watch that highlight. And he admitted to that himself. So he has crazy fast recovery. So Alex drops him, flash KOs him, and he comes to. And then he tries shooting on Alex. And then Alex elbows him probably 15, 20 times in the ear. And then he just drops back, and Alex gets on top, hits him a few more times. And if he falls a second time, it's like, what more do you need to see to me? Especially if he's not doing anything to defend himself. So calling it an early stoppage right away, I don't think that was early at all. I bet if you showed it to some people who granted, not a great excuse, but I bet if you show it to the majority of people out of 100, I'd say 85 people would tell you that was a fair stoppage. And then Yuri says it after, so there's really no more argument left to be had. But, he went out twice there, and I think it was a good stoppage. And now Alex Pereira, 2-time champ. So who would have predicted that? Who would have predicted that Alex goes out and within this year, I think it was the day after, I got a memory in my Snapchat, the day after Alex won this was the exact date that he beat Izzy. So within a year, he won the middleweight, lost the middleweight, went up to light heavyweight, beat a former light heavyweight champion, and then beat the other light heavyweight, the reigning lineal, I guess you could call it, light heavyweight champion. So Alex has had a crazy year. Everyone has been saying that. But super accomplished fighter. Did what Izzy couldn't do. I think, I've said before that I thought Alex should have retired after he beat Izzy the first time because he just shouldn't have gave him the chance for that comeback because at that point it's 3-0. But he does. Obviously, Izzy gets the win. And that just left a sour taste in my mouth. But, Alex, and at that point I was saying, man, he should have never, he should have just laid the belt down after he beat Izzy that first time. But, I think doing this, going up, at first beating Jan, who Izzy lost the belt to, beats him and then goes and wins the belt. So does two things that Izzy couldn't do at the light heavyweight division, beat Jan and win the belt. So that's even more of a hater troll move towards Izzy, which I just love. And then he has that crazy call out. I don't know if you guys saw Izzy's reaction. Izzy does those YouTube videos where he just kind of little fight companions, I guess you could call him, just him. Sometimes he's got other people like his brother. But he's watching the fight and he's like giving Alex his props. You can tell he's salty and pissed about it. And then Alex is like shouting him out, saying all this shit about how Izzy called him out about being in the bar and like being a drunk and his only claim to fame was him. And then obviously Alex used that motivation and came and did everything he did in the UFC. And Izzy's watching and he's like kind of laughing. He goes, "Oh, I wish you spoke English." And then literally, as if Alex heard him say that, 30 seconds later, takes the mic from Rogan, speaks English. And then Izzy like kind of shits his pants and like laughs it off. But he did not think that was funny. It's so funny to me how Alex is just like the perfect hater to Izzy. Even when he doesn't try to be. But, it doesn't look like Izzy's going to fight him at light heavyweight. He's probably going to stay out for a little bit longer than people think. I'd like him to come back to UFC 300, but I know that's a pretty tough ask. But, Pereira's probably going to fight Hill, and it seems like a lot of people are underestimating Jamal Hill. Once that fight actually gets made, we'll talk about it more, but I don't know why people don't think don't give Jamal Hill his credit, That guy's an animal, and they say he couldn't finish Glover, but he beat the brakes off of Glover, so I don't know. Like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit more once they actually announce the fight. But real quickly, we'll look at the fight night this weekend. There's some pretty good fights on the main card. You got Luana Pinheiro versus Amanda Ribas. That's pretty good. Chase Hooper is fighting Jordan Levitt. Jordan Levitt's a freak. That guy is a real weird dude. Chase Hooper has had a real strange career. His stand-up, it's improved. He looked better in his last fight. He was out. I only know that because he fought a guy from Mass in his last fight, and it was the best Chase Hooper had ever looked on the feet, which was like, what the fuck, man? The guy, he was tuning up some guy from Mass on the feet. But I looked at that guy's record, and he really wasn't that impressive. He was a jiu-jitsu guy, too. So, grain of salt with that victory. But Chase moved up to lightweight, looks a lot better. Jordan Levitt is kind of probably the right step for him to take in his career. They have him at a minus 245 favorite. I'd take those odds, but Jordan Levitt, he's not a real finisher. He doesn't. Actually, something interesting about Jordan Levitt is his wife. He said, surprisingly, his wife is going into labor, like right now, or some crazy shit like that. And he said that, I don't know, she's probably not going into labor right now, but she's pregnant and like about to give birth. And he says if his wife goes into labor, that he's just going to pull out of the fight. So a really weird scenario if you're Chase Hooper. You better hope the UFC has a backup, because that's strange. And I feel like the odds of that happening are pretty high. What if this happens like an hour before he walks out, 30 minutes before he walks out, he gets the news about his wife? Completely throw off the whole card. So that's weird. I'm surprised the UFC are letting him fight with that, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. And then we got Michael Morales versus Jake Matthews. That's a really good fight. Michael Morales is one of those undefeated prospects. Super young guy. I believe he's only 22, maybe 23 years old. But I don't know. They have Jake Matthews as the underdog, which is surprising because he's a veteran. I actually might like Matthews kind of humbling this kid in this fight, not going to lie, because Jake Matthews is no slouch. But it'll be a good test to see where Michael Morales is at in his career. I can definitely see this being his first loss. I can definitely see Jake Matthews finishing him. But yeah, 15-0 Morales versus 19-6. They're both coming off wins. Basically, I mean, you got Morales has about a 6-inch reach advantage, but I don't know. I really think it looks like people think Morales is going to win by finish. I could see Jake Matthews going the other way, I could see Jake Matthews finishing, getting the finish on him, but we'll see. I don't know if I'm probably want to do a parlay for this card, it's just a fight night. But we'll go on to the main event. Brendan Allen versus Paul Craig. Brendan Allen's another good fighter, kind of like similar to Josh Matthews. What am I saying? Brendan Allen is pretty similar to Jake Matthews in the sense that, they put him back-to-back on the card. I just feel like they have similar styles and their careers have gone in similar ways. Paul Craig, I think he's the only guy to finish Jamal Hill in the UFC with that broken arm. Paul Craig's stand-up is shit. He's got a really good ground game, so if he can take Brendan Allen down to the ground, he's going to have to look out. But I think Brendan Allen will probably get the finish on the feet. Paul Craig, he's former light heavyweight too, so him going down to middleweight for this, that might take a little bit off of his chin, but they're both coming off wins. And even though Paul Craig he might seem like the bigger guy because he's coming down from light heavyweight, he's only got a 1-inch reach advantage on him, so he's not that much bigger than Brendan Allen. And you got Allen at 10, him at 13. I don't know. Weird to have this being the main event of a fight night, not going to lie. Middle of the pack, middleweight fight, but it's a little bit strange to me. Next week's card is pretty sweet. I'm looking at it right now, or the following card, I guess, on December 2nd. Beneil Dariush, Arman Sarukian, Dan Hooker versus Bobby Green. Rob Font and Davison Figueiredo is moving up to bantamweight. Sean Brady versus Gastelum. That's a really good card. Khalil Roundtree. Wow. Clay Guida. Misha Tate and Clay Guida are fighting on the prelims of this card. That's funny, man. But that's besides the point, I guess. Yeah, I guess if you were to put together a parlay, I probably won't be betting on it. I'd do Jake Matthews underdog, Chase Hooper, and then probably throw Brendan Allen in there. They don't have the odds up for that. Yeah, so that's looking like it's going to be it for this episode. Next week we'll break down the fight night, see what we got right. Didn't make many picks, but just talk about the card, see how it went, and then maybe we have a week off until the Beneil fight. I'm not sure. I think there might be 1 week, but either way, we'll still talk about those fights. But yeah, that's it for this episode, guys. Thanks.
Top.